everyone to the First Name Basis podcast. This is something that I and others here at TribalScale do to talk to industry leaders, where we talk about tech, life, what's happening during the day. We try to make it a no BS conversation to really dig into what's actually going on in your work life and make this a learning experience for everybody who joins in. We're live on Instagram and YouTube right now, and my guest today is a really good friend of mine. I've had the opportunity of knowing for 10 years, worked together. I've invested in one of your firms before. And with me, I'm really happy to say I have Karthik Ramakrishnan, who is the Vice President and Head of Industry Solutions at Element AI. Element AI, if you know, has created a ton of buzz on bringing industry and enterprise solutions to the market. And so, Karthik, we're going to dig more into what that means. So welcome.
Thank you. Happy to be here, Sheetal. Good to see you.
It's so good to see you.
Virtually, I haven't seen you in person, and it feels like years now. But we're on. So this is fun.
On. No, it's so good to see you. And I made a request for you, so I brought myself a bottle of Hendrick's. And I know you love your wine after 5 p.m. And saying that it's 5:03 right now, I think it'll make the conversation a lot more fluent if we pour ourselves a drink. What do you think?
I think so too. I'm ready and kicking.
Let's do it. Let's do it. For those of you watching, this is a Sheetal pour coming up. So, while we're pouring our drinks, Karthik, tell us a little. Oh man, that's even worse than a Sheetal.
That's going to be a really fluid conversation.
Yeah, I'm here actually at the TribalScale office. It's a beautiful office that I can't wait to see everybody come back into. Miss having the buzz that we have here in the office. But Karthik, while we're pouring our drinks, tell us about yourself, man. I know you really well, like I know most of the guests on the show, but I want everybody else to know who you are.
So the last 3 years, I've been at Element AI. Pretty exciting place to be. There you go. This is OG style.
Sipping on gin and juice.
Yeah. So I've been in Element AI for the last 3 years, essentially in the go-to-market function for Element, helping us, work with clients and figuring out how we can best help them launch their AI journeys and continue on them. Part of that, mainly been in the startup world. So joined a startup right out of my school in the telco space.
That was Redknee, right?
Yeah, that was Redknee.
Yeah, another Canadian success story. It's awesome.
Yeah, so we were there. I was there for 7 years. We went IPO. I joined when there were like 40 people. It was a heady time.
Yeah.
This is right out of the .com bubble. So one of the success stories out of the .com bubble. Cheers.
Cheers to all our viewers. Cheers.
Cheers. And since then, took some time off, did an MBA, and then after that, I've been building my startups. The first one was a colossal failure. In 6 months, I called it quits.
Okay.
The second one was a good success. We actually built a mobile advertising network just when mobile was all starting off.
Yeah. Go a little deeper into that one.
Yeah, that was Blue Trumpet out of an incubator called Hatch Labs in New York. And so this is when I started working with Extreme Labs with Amar and Sunny, and we started.
Amar actually was just on the podcast before you, so pretty cool.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Is that all you've been doing all day? Just podcasts?
Dude, I've been doing a lot more. Actually, I'll tell you in a bit. We've been really, really busy. But yeah, continue.
Yeah, so Amar was great. It was we did that for about 3 years. Exited. That's kind of when I got into really doing kind of machine learning, because we were trying to do match the right ads in the right places for the right users and trying to improve conversion rates and things like that. So that was kind of my introduction. It was literally at that time, 2012, when that breakthrough at University of Toronto happened, which kind of set off the path for neural networks to become the kind of synonymous with artificial intelligence. And then after that,
awesome how that all started in Canada. Like it's.
Yeah, I mean,
there's pockets of it everywhere, but like Canada's the University of Toronto is known for it.
Toronto is known for it, but really there's a bigger Canadian story to it, right? And it
Okay.
starts with CFAR, the Center for Intelligent Investments. So the government of Canada invests in research,
Yeah.
and they bring in top class researchers into Canada by
Sure.
funding their work. So that's how Dr. Hinton, Dr. Bengio, Dr. Yann LeCun, these are all considered the godfathers of artificial intelligence.
Sure.
That's how they ended up in Canada.
Okay.
And so for the last 30 years, when their research wasn't even working, they continued funding them. So Canada continued funding the research in neural networks. And so that breakthrough, of course, there's many people around the world, Dr. Sutton, and there's just so many luminaries you can name.
Hmm.
But certainly this part of that story of AI belongs to Canada.
Cool.
And so having said that, then started my next startup, which was a little bit more deeper in machine learning. It was like AI before it was called
Sure.
AI. Built that company, Got Up Labs, where you were one of the investors, and early investors at that. And then once I exited that company, I was at Deloitte for a year, and then
Sure.
Element came calling, and it was back to my startup roots.
Okay. Okay. So tell us a little bit about Element. I mean, you guys came out the gates with with a big bang. I mean, pretty big round, lots of money raised, uh, all-star cast of people. The best in tech and in AI as part of your core. Tell us about what did Element start off and what was its mission to go and do?
So Element's gone. So yes, absolutely. I think we're very fortunate.
Yeah.
I would say as a company, and the founding team has done a phenomenal job of bringing some of the best of the best
Sure.
into the company,
Yeah.
right? And it's been 3 years of learning, right?
Sure.
I think in the beginning it was a heady
As
time.
any startup, I mean, it doesn't matter
Every
how well
startup,
you're funded. You got to figure out who the hell you are, who the f you are in 3 years. Like
yeah.
it's quick. It goes by fast. Yeah.
And particularly in the space where everyone, the entire world, and enterprise and industry is figuring out what to do with artificial intelligence, you're a startup that's trying to figure it out with them.
Sure.
Um, so lots of learnings the last 3 years. When we came out, we had the vision of really building game-changing end-to-end systems
Sure.
in order powered by data and models
Hmm.
with predictive power to change the way we actually do work and do things. That thesis continues till today. The way we go about it has obviously evolved over the last 3 years, and right now I think in a very very strong spot, because as we've learned with the industry and what
Hmm.
we realized is the path to product and um, large scale deployments in artificial intelligence within the enterprise is through solutions,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
It's not services. So it's not, you have to figure out, you have to problem solve with the customer,
Sure.
because they're trying to figure out, you're trying to figure out, and you have some expertise and they have the domain expertise that together we're building now solutions with our clients.
Okay. So walk us through. Give us some examples. What are you guys doing? I just know
Yeah, I mean,
you are one person who gets more miles than I do on Air Canada or any given airline. Looks like you're in the far east for 2 days and you come flying back for the weekend to go see your wife and kid. Um, what are you doing besides being on airplanes and in different cities all the time?
yeah, it's a fun time, right? Again, very fortunate to be working with leaders of very large enterprises to help them figure out how they can bring the power of artificial intelligence to make their companies better. So
Sure.
that's essentially what I'm doing most of the time. But in that process, you know, you see companies in various levels of maturity. There are ones that are just starting off, and there are ones that, very few of them though, at the very top end of the spectrum, where they're just firing on all cylinders,
Sure.
right? And so in that Far East, absolutely, we think there's, Element's ambition always was to be a global company from day one, and we are. It's hard, but what we get to see is what AI means and what it can bring to the table, and it's different in every part of the world.
Okay, so let's stop with the fluff stuff. Give me a real use case. You don't even have to say, like, if it's a bank, I don't care for the name. Say a bank. If it's an airline, say it's an airline. Like, but give me a real use case. What have you guys done out there?
Yeah, I mean, let's take this as an example, like a retailer, right?
Sure.
Where retail has been suffering from, figuring out what's on store shelves, and particularly, and this actually relates to the current times with COVID. And there's a run up on items in the store.
Toilet paper.
Toilet paper, right? That's just the basic.
Hair dye.
There's a run up.
Latest craze.
There's a run up on so many different things. I mean, have you found pasta lately? Like that's hard, right? So the idea is, can you predict what assortment of items do you need on the shelf? Predict what's going to fly and ensure the availability of those items on the shelf. Now, this is an age-old problem in retail, right? Yeah. In physical retail. And so there's a disconnect between the physical goods on the shelf and when it gets into the POS, once it gets rung out, and then gets into the central inventory system to say you need to go replenish that.
Sure.
So how can you use AI to better predict shelf assortment, what's available on the shelf, et cetera? That's one example, right? And I think those are very, very interesting kind of use cases that one could work on, right?
Sure.
In the financial services space, being able to predict, let's say corporate banking, right? You try to predict fraud, right?
Okay.
And then there are certain very, very large players who deal with, let's say, 80% of the trade going through the planet, because most of the corporates bank with them. These are global companies, right?
Right.
So when you have that kind of visibility, what can you do with that data? Can you detect fraud better? Can you detect the trade, the flow of goods better, right? And now if you could predict that, how can you use that information to actually help your customers do better, right?
Sure.
Creditworthiness, from creditworthiness all the way to supply chain risk, right? So this is now banks becoming more than just a bank, right? So I think these are the kind of opportunities we're seeing. That I think that's an exciting thing. Now, it takes it's not easy. It's easier said than done.
Sure. So it's not as easy as me just going out and saying, I'm hiring a data scientist. I now have an AI department.
Exactly, right? You need to bring the data together. You need to bring the expertise together. You need to bring your partners together. And then you have to roll it out. And then you have to train people. It's no different from any transformation that's happened before, right? So at the top of the hype cycle, I don't believe in the hype cycle of AI anymore. We've kind of cooled off a little bit I think it's a good thing. Because you don't have, unreasonable expectations of what this technology can do. But at the height of that cycle, everyone thought, like, to your point, I will hire a bunch of data scientists, give them a bit of data, and then
build me a model.
Magic. Right? It doesn't work that way.
So let's get into but before I get into some questions around COVID and some of my frustrations I'm finding about what's happening, and hopefully you could ease some of my tension about it. But first, how does one even start to think about AI? I want to start there. Like AI, and let's take the government for example. How is the government today using AI? Are they even using AI? How do they even, if they're not, what should they start thinking about doing?
And the answer is yes. It's not ubiquitous, but yes, in pockets they are, right? So actually, the story of COVID starts with a company out of Middle Canada called Blue Dot.
Okay.
Right? In December, using an NLP algorithm, or
NLP is?
Natural language processing.
I know,
so
just tell everyone else.
So natural language processing, where you can understand, the model can read the text, understand what it's saying, and then make some predictions based on that, right? Then you have natural language understanding, so processing, understanding, and then decisioning. Let's say these are 3 things that you would do to build a good solution. So they've been around for a long time, and they've been using news reports coming from different parts of the planet to predict or detect pandemics or emerging threats of pandemics.
Wow.
And Blue Dot predicted or detected the rise of COVID back in December.
Okay.
Right? So to your point about AI and COVID, like AI was one of the first ones to detect this was going on, number one. Number two, I think there's so many different applications that we are, the different governments and are thinking about, right? Can I predict what the spread, can I forecast what the spread rate of the pandemic is going to be, right? The virus is going to be. Does social distancing even have an impact? Now, what does social distancing even mean? When do the peaks of these occur? And based on those peaks, how do I plan for capacity in my hospitals to manage? And
Right.
what interventions can I take to know if a peak is going to happen? Then I can take interventions so that you avoid the peaks. I mean, that's why we're doing social distancing. These are all coming from modeling,
Sure.
from the data that we're seeing. And yeah, so I mean, there's more and more, right? Now than staffing, right? How do you, can you predict which locations will have higher impacts of the
Sure.
spread? To staff those places better. And what kind of staff do you need, right? Our healthcare workers, who are, by the way, troopers at the moment,
Absolutely.
just doing a phenomenal job. I mean, a personal friend of mine, she's in the front lines in the ICU, and I feel for her. Like she's got, anyways, we won't get into that, but they're putting
No, they're putting their
their
lives
life
at risk every day just to save ours, right? Like they're doing
and their families' lives, right? They come back home as well, so they're worried about all these things. But anyways, point is, how do we? What kind of staff do we need? What should the scheduling of that staff need? What the capacity of that staffing needs to be? All of these can be modeled based on the data, and they're interconnected, right? So if I can predict the pandemic spread better, what the interventions look like better, where they're going to occur better, then I can staff better to treat it when
Sure.
it does things, right? So those are all things that are active.
So let me get into my frustration.
Yeah,
My frustration. We are 5 weeks into formalized lockdown. Some companies who are more proactive.
It feels like a year to me, but anyway.
It feels forever, right? And just simple math. Hopefully a kid in elementary school understands exponents and exponential growth. And this started in North America with a handful of people and spread to now over 1 million in the US, right? And we haven't done any type of real widespread testing, so we don't even have the right data in order to be able to build better models or better AI, as you were just putting it. And we don't allow, our civil liberties, we're very strong about, so we don't want any type of tracking where, hey, if I was a carrier and I came in contact with people and if I test positive, they get some sort of alert or notification. And we are now saying, hey, it's been 5-6 weeks, we kind of flattened the curve, it's time to start letting people back out. Is that I'm not even talking about AI, is that not just a disaster waiting to happen? Like, what has changed? You suck at taking data, you suck at doing tests, you have no data to make any type of model, and you have no type of tracing on how the virus is spreading amongst your community. But yet you're saying, hey, you know what? Enough's enough. Economy's going to shit. Let's go back out.
Yeah. So
what am I missing here?
Yeah. So those are not great decisions to be made. You have to be very careful about these things, right? Reopening the economy, as much as it hurts. I mean,
it's happening. It's happening as we speak. There's a bunch of states that are going along with this and doing it.
Look, that's a decision they're making. There are people. Look, I mean, without getting political, but we're going to get political, right?
Like, whatever.
If it's a political decision, then you are going to bear the consequences of that decision.
Right.
Right. So whether that be in the voting polls later on, or
the voting polls, the virus is not political. So
yeah, but that's my point. It's only a function. But at the end of the day, the choice is still with the people. You can open up many things, right? You can still choose to socially distance yourself, watch what happens, and take good personal choices.
Right. Well, right? That's the one thing that has changed. I will say that is that you now know how the virus spreads, and so you need to mitigate yourself from getting that spread. However, it's been 5 weeks. And I say this to any political leader, or want to say it to their face, how don't you have fucking data yet? Like, why haven't you put an importance on actually being able to test more, gather more? You've had 5 weeks. I
So
mean,
some of this, like actually, so let me push back on that, right? So I'm not going to defend anybody here on better predictions and modeling and making better choices, right, as leaders. But what I will say is there are very big privacy issues in collecting that data, right? So now, Shido, will you open up your phone, share exactly where you've been for the next 24 hours
sure.
for the world, not just 24 hours, for time unlimited, all right? And for those kind of things to happen, you actually have to pass laws that may never be taken away. So this could be something forever.
Oh, I totally get it. I totally get it. However, you still haven't done that. Like, you haven't even, like, there's not even an approach to it, right? I think it's pretty cool seeing Apple and Google saying, hey, we'll start working together to share some of this information. And there's ways to try to anonymize it and do it, but I think you should definitely get a notification if I'm in the office today. If on my way in here today there was somebody who was in the elevator with me who does test positive, you damn right, I'd love a notification and say I got to self-quarantine myself, keep myself away from all my family, just be alone, because I've been very close to someone who has tested positive, right?
Yeah, but Sheila, it's not just about you, right? There are other people. There's a person in the elevator want that to be revealed.
I think
That
when it
he
comes to
was
public
that
safety,
that
it's
person, he or she
different.
was.
I 100% agree with you. I mean, I agree there's a big issue here. But is there not ways that we could anonymize some of this data and leverage AI to predict where the next hotspot is going to be, to predict these types of things? Almost like Minority Report. Like, if we go into, like, Minority Report's a great movie, which was like AI, right? I know you're going to commit a crime before you commit the crime.
Yeah. So, well, I mean, prescience is. Oh, yeah. We're getting into a very hot topic there, but I would say this. There's a whole other favorite
Why is
topic
it
of
such a
mine.
hot topic? Is that happening already?
No, because like the minute you start going there, it's a hot topic because it's like, oh, is AI going to take away my jobs? Uh, you know,
Will it?
dystopian movies come to.
Will it?
It's not like, I mean, at least not the version of AI that exists today or whatever AI is, right? It certainly not, right? And I will give you lots of examples of very practical examples of why not. But
Okay.
just to finish that thought, like the there are data collection mechanisms that are helping, right? So if you have companies like Blue Dot, for example, and there are many others, not just Blue Dot, that there are other means to get this data. They are available. People are willing to help, right? You don't have to pass the laws. The data collection has been going on for a very long time. There are means to do this in a safe, in a privacy conscious way. Governments have to adopt that. And I would say,
I got a question. Is Element involved in any type of? You don't have to say with who, but is Element involved in projects that are consisting of what you just said?
Look, I can't speak to specifics, right? These are whether we are or we aren't. I wouldn't want to comment on that right now.
Okay. Well, I'm hoping that we are. You are.
Well, I mean, I hope so too. I hope so too.
I hope
right?
so.
But these are, I mean.
Okay, let's say you were. You don't have to say if you were, if you weren't. If you were, what happens tomorrow? How would that help if you were involved? How would an organization like yours or Blue Dot or whoever you mentioned,
Okay.
what would they do?
So I will tell you, there is one public project we are involved in. Okay. So we have a platform called Knowledge Scout. So Knowledge Scout is essentially what Ask Jeeves is supposed to be. So it's unstructured queries. You could put in queries and it has a corpus of data and will give you the most contextual answer. So you can say,
is that Google?
No, this is much more contextual. So there's ontologies that it's building on very specific data sets and the responses are very, very close to what they need to be, right? So we have now taken about 10 to 20,000 research papers into the Knowledge Scout platform that is now publicly available. So researchers can now search for certain specific terms or questions even. Has this thing been solved before?
Sure.
So it can give you a response. Like, what is the interaction between drug X and drug Y? And we'll look into that corpus.
Oh, very cool.
If it exists and give that answer. And so what we're trying to do is help speed up the research programs. So that is one way in which, and that's publicly available, it's free. So we've made our platform open to researchers to be able to, and drug companies to be able to proceed with their
Excuse me.
vaccine
I
discovery.
shouldn't be sneezing this. Everybody just freaked everybody out.
It's actually
My
we're
allergies, man. It's my allergies.
but yeah, I mean, I think so. Though yes, that's a project we're involved in. I think it's very exciting. And there's other companies out there doing something similar, right? And we are certainly very interested in helping companies go through this. One of the things we should talk about, right, is post-COVID, what happens? Yes, COVID is an issue. As a humanity, we will survive this and we'll overcome this.
Sure.
While we're doing that, it's going to look very tough. It looks hard and frustrating, right? But what happens post? Do we still remain? Do we remain unchanged? Do we go back to what it was like, January 1st of this year?
I effing hope so. I don't see that happening, but I hope so.
I think there are things that are going to fundamentally change.
I agree. I don't think you sitting in a restaurant the way we used to go sit at a restaurant, for example, at least for the time being, for a while, is going to change. Which sucks, because I love going out to restaurants and having fun sitting very close in tight little spot places with my friends. Right? That's my
let
roots.
me give you okay, that's consumer behavior. So actually, yes, so there's like different buckets of things, right? Consumer behavior. So one of the big things we've seen is like home deliveries, right? So Instacart, all of these home delivery companies cannot handle the demand.
Yeah.
Right? So that just shows consumers have taken to online grocery shopping in a very, very large way.
Sure.
Right?
Absolutely.
Now, what happens post-COVID? Are they is that going to go back to zero? Or is there going to be residual of 50%, let's say, of people just saying, hey, you know what? Now I'm comfortable with the convenience. Just like Amazon Prime, I can order whatever I want and I get that back to my store, right? Or get to my door.
Absolutely.
So now how does that change the business of a grocer completely?
Or any retailer for that matter.
Any retailer for that matter.
Right. Any
right?
retail, you're getting comfortable even saying, clothes is something that I was super reluctant to like order online. I'm a bigger guy, sizes never fit right. I might be a extra large somewhere, and the lowest I'll get is a large, but maybe double XL. Like clothing was one thing, but now even I'm getting comfortable like just shopping online for clothing.
Yeah. So so there's going to be a spike in that. I mean, that's why you see Amazon and Shopify's prices hitting 52-week all-time highs in this economy, right?
But then you see other retailers hitting their 52-week or lifetime lows, right?
Right, and that's going to change, right? So who survives this as well is a big question. That's what I mean. Residual. What's the change that we're going to see post-COVID? Another example, right? Another thing that let's do this thought experiment, right? So PPEs, we're not going to China. We're trying to get, stuff, PPEs and masks and sanitizers.
Gowns and everything, yeah.
Right, and there's a lot of price gouging going on there, right? If you hear the EU, they're upset because the prices went up. There was a couple of...
You know what? I was actually just on that. I was chatting with a friend earlier today, and it's like every shady mofo is like, I got a hookup who can get you N95 masks right now. Gouging fool.
And $45 of that, right? But the thing is, so here's my point. What this is going to expose is that countries are in these kind of situations. You don't have any manufacturing left. You've outsourced all of this stuff.
Yep.
Right? You've offshored all of it. You are now a consumer economy. 70% of your GDP is consumer, right? You actually have no hard industries.
Yeah.
So what's going to happen, perhaps, is nearshoring is going to happen. We're going to bring back some of that stuff, and that's going to increase. So what happens to globalization as a whole as a result?
Yep.
Another reason for the spread of COVID was all the travel that we are now able to do. Right?
Okay.
20 years ago, people weren't traveling and you didn't have this many flights going all over the place, right? That's why this thing has spread as well, very, very rapidly.
Of course.
Right? So are there restrictions that are going to be put in now on travel? Are we going to bring back manufacturing into
I think so.
Western economies. And isn't that a good thing?
I don't know. You tell me, what does the AI say? You're the one who sees into the future, not me. You actually have a crystal ball, so tell me what the crystal ball is saying.
This is, well, in that case, it's not artificial, it's real intelligence.
I'll argue with you on that one. Cheers.
No, if I could only, right? But we all wish we could predict the future. But I think there are strong things to consider here, right? There are fundamental structural changes that I think will happen. Okay. And I think some of these are going to be for the better. Some of them, yeah, we'll have to see how we, eat at restaurants again. Maybe it's different.
So we got a question here from Elsa coming off Instagram. She was asking, what project are you most proud of in your career?
Oh, wow. Project.
What project? Get real, man. Stop talking fluff. Be descriptive.
In my career, see, that's a very broad question, right? Like now it's the last 20 years, not just the last 3.
Well, why don't we do it to the last 3, and so that way, or I don't know, you might not even be able to talk about it, right?
Yeah, I mean, obviously,
I don't care if you go back. You just.
Yeah, I mean, I would say the most fulfilling projects are the ones where the client and you both succeeded, right? Where
obviously you want a win-win, but be descriptive. Tell us a use case. What did you do?
Just give me a second to think here, dude. Oh my god.
Well, just say that. See, I'm thinking. Don't give me your filler bullshit. I call it out right
away. Yeah, I would have to say. Well, I would say the most proud of the very first project I ever did out of school. Okay. My master's thesis was used to build the product for Redmi that I joined, right? So we basically built a router. So in Linux, and
not basically, you did build a router in Linux.
Yeah, I remember that.
No, basically.
Built a router in Linux. So usually routers were built on hardware, right? So Nortel, Ericsson, Cisco, blah blah. That's how their business were built, and they were damn expensive, and you couldn't program them. So in my master's thesis, I was working on this thing where I built this router in Linux. We essentially deployed that, and Vodafone was one of the first companies. So right out of school, my first client that I sold to was Vodafone UK, one of the largest mobile operators, where we put in completely different paradigm for handling mobile internet. And to show for that, we still have the patents on it. That's awesome.
Nice.
So we Nortel, Cisco, Motorola twin that project, and we enabled prepaid mobile internet access. This is back in 2003.
Okay.
And that to me was an achievement of a lifetime, not just for me.
What internet were you using back then, 2003? You were using WAP sites.
Exactly.
WAP sites, yeah. If you had a BlackBerry, which was a Blueberry, so you would be able to get email.
Yeah.
Only BlackBerry devices, or maybe if you had a Palm, you could get email.
You could get email, and you could do. You had rudimentary browsers, right? And you had mobile.
Yeah.
There was these rudimentary.
I do remember off my Palm Pilot, I was able to actually trade, like go into my TD Waterhouse account and trade. Back then.
Do you remember MMS?
Of course. Multimedia messaging, right?
Messaging, yeah, exactly. So like SMS, but it was.
Remember even the phone plans, like were such ripoffs. Like you get unlimited text and you get 50. You get 50 free MMS messages.
So, okay, funny story on the MMS. This is why we won that project, because MMS used to go on IP traffic, and you had to be able to look. So everyone wanted to charge MMS per message.
Yeah.
It was very hard to do an IP because it's very different from SMS. But you wanted to charge it like SMS. So we were able to do that in a software-based router.
Cool.
And that's why we won that project. And to me, the win is client, us, etc. But it was the team. Oh my God, people, like we were all fresh out of Waterloo grads, all fresh out of school, like figuring things out. And in 6 months, built something that was phenomenal, that still runs in some parts of the world today.
Yeah. Oh, that's pretty cool.
So, yeah.
Did it handle ringtones? What was your favorite ringtone? What was your
Oh my
favorite
God.
ringtone you had on your phone?
You know the frog ringtone? The
No, sing it for us.
oh jeez, no, I'm not gonna do that.
Do it, man.
I can't even remember it, but it was like I remember that was like the funniest thing. Like in the UK, especially, it was from the UK. I'll send it to you post.
I'll tell you, mine was Flock of Seagulls. I want to run the avenue. But it was just the instrumental version. It was pretty
So
good.
let me ask you, how are you doing, man? How are you handling this COVID situation?
You know, I gotta say, I'm actually figuring out that my house that Michelle has put together is actually pretty nice. I never spent that much time in it, and I'm like, hey, this is actually set up pretty well. I'm enjoying that aspect, but I'm losing my mind, man. I'm such a people person. I can't sit still in one area, let alone
That we know.
one city for that long. And it's just I just miss the interaction. So you said I've been doing a lot of podcasts, is because I always joke around, and you've heard me say this before. We're having a couple of glasses of wine over dinner, and I'm like, this should be a podcast. So much learning just happened, and so I got up and said, you know what? We haven't done our first name basis podcast in a while, so I'm gonna go call up all my friends and be like, hey, you're coming on, and let's go teach the world something. Hopefully they learn something, or they just laugh at us, which is cool too. We'll give them some entertainment.
Yeah, it's
But
good to be a spectator.
otherwise, work-wise, look, we've been really busy. It's been a bit of a shitstorm, not to lie. I get it. CFOs are just hunkering down, saying no more. We're not spending anymore. Let's hunker down on budgets. Let's hunker down on budgets, and that also creates a bit of a tension. But my value add to every partner has always been, hey, let me do right by you. If budget is an issue, then let's have a conversation about budget. If payments are an issue, let's see what we could do in regards to payments. But if you think what COVID has done, it's actually been forcing a lot of organizations to accelerate their digital roadmaps, right? If you had a process before that was very human intensive, how could digital help make that easier? Case in point, look at all the applications going in for all these government grants. If you can't go do that face to face anymore, how could you digitize that process? Because that's the only way to talk to your consumer now. There's other back office things of like, hey, let's digitize some of our processes because the turnaround time is too long, and you can't have everybody in an office being able to do this stuff. So how could you do that? But really, what's happening now is I'm finding that companies are really cutting their OpEx, and they're cutting people, unfortunately, and they're shrinking that part of the business, right, Karthik? And what they are doing is they're actually looking at strategic partnerships with a company like TribalScale, saying, hey, like, how could we work with you and leverage our CapEx? Because we know we may not need a full-time team. And you know what? Your transformation story is pretty good. That when we want to bring this stuff back in-house, we could use your transformation pillar and offering of your service to bring that back in-house. And that's really starting to resonate. But most of our calls that we're on is having conversations with our clients and figuring out how we can invest in them now so that they know we're the right partner for them as soon as this CFO ban or spending ban goes away. But I think that's just the way to do it. If you could invest in your customer before, since they've invested in you over the years and now you're investing back in them, that's just the way it goes. Hey, this will be cyclical. They're there for us. We're there for them. So we're busier than ever. The income, I won't lie, is lower than ever, but I'm positive we'll come out of this pretty strong.
Hey, so any enterprises out there looking for a digital transformation partner, Cheeto's your guy. And if you got budget, he's definitely your guy. But let's talk about that, right? So you said something interesting, which is back office. Like, how do we make it less human intensive?
Yeah,
Those statements are the ones that make people afraid of AI.
I agree.
Right?
But
So
even what I'm saying, that doesn't mean that you won't have a job tomorrow. That just means you don't have to make human mistakes that happen all the time, or you could be going and doing some stuff that actually requires your brain, and let the digital process take care of all the low level stuff, right?
Okay, good. So that's the completeness of that answer. But when leaders go in and say, "Well, we're going to do AI because it's going to reduce our human resource expense,"
Sure.
That's the wrong approach. And I'll give you another example. So I told you I'll give an example. Here's an example.
All right.
So an insurance company, one of the leaders came to me and said, yeah, and the team came and said, we need automated processing of our XYZ, right? So documents can be processed very quickly because we don't want to deal with people. I'm like, so this is me talking to them like, yeah, but why would you say that? Like, why would your people even help you do this if you say that? They're not going to help you. And he's like, and he said, well, okay, let me rephrase that. What I really mean is I can't even find the people to do that job. It is so mundane. It is so boring. First of all, no one wants to do it. So he's having a hard time even filling the positions. Two, that person can't retain those people because after a year,
you're done. Yeah.
Right? You're gone. Like, I want to do something else. This is so boring, right?
Yeah.
So those are right. You're right. Those are right processes for, those are the right processes that are ripe for disruption with technology.
Yep.
But most leaders just say, it's a hot queue, and like, I want to reduce the headcount, but it's not reduction of headcount. You can't even find the headcount to do the job.
But even if you did, like
and yes, there's a second part of that. What you're saying, yes.
Even if you did, like, that is not something you need. And it's not about, like, what we find is the opposite. I find the opposite. I find there's so many political battles within an organization that somebody feels their self-worth or their contribution to the organization is how many reports they have. Not how much value they bring to the business, how many reports they have.
That's the curse of the large company.
Those 600 people under you hate you because all you do is try to complicate things more so you can have more and more reports to make busy work seem like you're actually doing something. And that's where I see the enterprise struggle most. I'd be very blunt about it. Like, that's where they struggle.
Yeah, but that is
nothing so political that they think their self-worth is because I got 200 people reporting to me. Well, if you're efficient, you should be able to do the job with 20.
Yeah, I mean, but again, that's still so yeah, yes, but that's disassociated from, or I don't sure how it's correlated with the fact that if you say you're going to create processes just so you can have more people, yeah, that's terrible.
No, but dude, the more people you have, the more busy work happens. I've been speaking to a lot of CEOs right now who've unfortunately had to cut teams. It's very scary to say, but a lot of them have come to me and said, do you know what? It's kind of weird. I felt like all this talent that I had was consequential and talent that I needed. Not that this is nothing against those people, but I'm still able to operate. And what I thought was like the one piece of my puzzle, if it's gone, everything's going to break down. Actually wasn't. It wasn't as materialistically different to my outcome as they thought. And that's scary because companies do get fat. And I've just gone through a whole bunch of restructuring. I'm the first one to say that, right? Companies do get fat, and they get fat all over the place. But there shouldn't be, if you're running a company the right way, there shouldn't be one who takes down the whole thing. And a lot of these companies that have had some of the stuff happen, like some of these unfortunate temporary layoffs, they're still running, and hopefully they can bring these people back in a different capacity for something else.
So,
all right, so we were talking about letting people go and still being efficient and getting fat, and we were talking about processes that can be automated. But there is a big fear that AI is going to kill 1 million jobs. You read about articles that say all this stuff. What do you got to say?
Well, okay, so there are some jobs that are going to go away. Let's be honest about that, right? But I think the nature of the job changes, to your point, right, that you made earlier.
Yeah.
Second thing, jobs will get more interesting.
Okay.
Right. Again, practical example. We worked with an insurance company where we did claims automation, right? So, people put in claims, it's health claims, and the volume of claims is so much they could never. The team just couldn't keep up, right? Sure. So what we said, so we will automate away the lowest value claims. So they're like, if it's $20 or whatever, like, I don't even want anyone to look at it. It costs me more for someone to review that document.
Of course, the process just causes.
Yeah. So now we created an AI with a document processing system and the decision system that says, okay, this is low value, boom, gone. So now we've taken away 25% of the cases away. right?
Yep.
Then we came into, so we automated 25%, then we went to 40%, now we're at 65% of automation of cases,
Okay.
right? And you know how that worked? That worked because no one was let go of this process.
Right.
What happened was the really complex cases, because these are health claims, and these are people who are like, I need this medicine, and you said you will pay for this,
Right.
and you are not.
Right.
Right? And they're like, hey man, I got 5 minutes to spend with you. No can do. Boom, done, gone. Right? And the experience of the customer is terrible. The pain of the human on the other end who depended on this insurance, who paid for that insurance, is terrible.
Brutal, yeah.
Right? And the experience of the agent as well, who has to give these bad answers because they don't have time to focus on them. Right? So we just freed up 65% capacity. That same team now takes the other 35%. 65%, 3,500, yes. So 35%.
Speaking of which, we got to pour ourselves another drink, but keep going.
So it took the 35% of the cases, and now they're spending quality time, right?
Sure.
The complex, $10,000, $50,000 or more cases, and helping find solutions. I think it'd be like, sorry, the package that you signed for you can't claim this, but I understand you have this really terrible health issue. It costs a lot of money. Let me find a solution for you.
For sure.
They're spending on high quality human touch examples. And you know who helped build that system, get it from 25% cases to 65% of the cases? Was those agents. Because they understood.
Yeah, they understood. This is like, my job is easier. I could spend my time on real things.
Right? Yeah. Those are real examples. So jobs do become better.
Yeah.
You fill in places where no one wants those jobs, right? And then third bucket, brutally honest, there are jobs that are going away, right? But there are places where you have to transfer your skills. So there is some effort that you have to put in to do that, right? Sure. And this is where governments, schools, education systems need to come together, and industry needs to come together to make sure that section or segment of the workforce that may or will get displaced has alternatives, and you bring them along the journey.
I agree.
Right?
I agree.
And it's not just blue collar, right? This is white collar. Like a lot of white collar jobs are going, right?
Absolutely. You look at we did a podcast last week with Dr. Daniel Pepe and Anna Fote from Sun Life, and they were talking about the initiatives that they've taken to help fix the medical system. Especially with COVID, there's way more will now to actually start implementing technology to solve a lot of solutions. And so they've been doing that, and it's a great podcast. You should see it. But they're able to eliminate a lot of the mundane tasks that poor support staff is doing, such as fax machines. I had to use a fax machine this week to speak to a medical office, and I tweeted how am I supposed to trust you with my life if I gotta send you a fax? It's on.
Those are integrated systems.
I'm just gonna get another drink.
Those are crazy things where antiquated systems are certainly still abound. But my favorite example is when horse carriages, when cars came in.
Yeah.
Was
there a horse carriage union that was all upset with cars?
Yeah, they were.
Come on. Serious?
Yes. Yeah. When electricity was being put into New York, and now could get lights with electric powered lights.
Sure.
Which union got very pissed off? The people who went in and lit the candles in those lampposts. Lampposts existed. They were just gas or candle driven, and someone went and lit those lamps.
Yeah.
You think they didn't lose their jobs? When the elevator came in, right? The automated, in the elevator people, right? I'm sure they have a term, and I'm terrible. And
technicians.
Not technicians. These were lift operators. Right?
There you go. There's the word.
There you go. So you enter the lift, this person, wearing a bell hat or whatever, saying which floor, and boom, 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 taking you up and down. They lost jobs,
Right.
right? Because you
Right.
didn't
Right. Right.
need to have the operator, right? So the displacement of jobs is not new,
Yep.
and it's not a bad thing, and it's not progress at all costs either.
Gotcha.
That is what we got to understand, right? And we have to find a way in this generation to really take, these are physical tasks. Now we even say digital tasks are going to go away from humans.
Yep. I agree.
Right? So no one's going to be, no one's immune to this, but what we have to figure out is where can you add the most amount of value?
Sure.
To your point, right? And if you add value, hell, those jobs are not going away. In fact, find and seek where you can add value.
So just on that. So let's fast forward to today. It's funny you mentioned horse and carriage, and the economy has now, as of today, lost. Well, in the U.S., has lost every job that was gained since the Great Depression.
Oh, yeah.
Right. So it's a super unfortunate situation. How do you see what do you see as the skills that are going to come back into the workforce? Right, like what type, like what are you seeing as you're talking about AI digitizing a bunch of processes and taking away some of the mundane tasks? What if I was a student, or if I was, you know, even myself, if it was just me, even at my age, what should I start thinking about, saying, hey, this is the type of talent I should be bringing back into the workplace?
Okay. First of all, Meg Gupta is online. Hey, Meg. He's saying
What's that,
hello.
Meg?
I think so places where the human touch is needed, right? So this example, and it may not be obvious, like the claims management example that I just said, right? Where you really have to work and empathize with people.
Sure.
That's an easy answer. Those jobs are going to continue, and they're going to stay there. And jobs where radiologists, right? Like now Google has these algorithms that can detect at par, if not better, than a radiologist.
Oh wow!
But the radiologists, yeah, I mean it's a bit old news, maybe a year ago. But they're now they can go and they have to spend time with people to hold that hand with a cancer patient.
Of course,
radiology.
A machine's never going to take away the human.
A machine's never going to do that, right? So that human touch is way more important. In fact, why are we apprehensive of going to doctors, like doctors in general? I mean, at least I am. It's like just so clinical. It's just like, oh, you're getting on level, go away. And you're being very intimate in that situation. You're sharing some very, very personal things. And you need that human interaction, the human empathy at that other end. So focus on that, right? So all the way from doctors to claims professionals, right? The human element is going to become more important. Right?
Okay.
And I don't mean that in a pie in the sky way. I mean it in a very real way.
Yeah. I get it. No, I get it. And I think there's a lot to be said about human decision making and human empathy, emotion. The EQ of a person in making a job better, or even bringing the right approach to a solution that a machine can never really replicate, at least not for now.
Yeah. And then there's
isn't that an issue? Is that not an issue where AI just goes off and starts making decisions without that empathy or
no? So this is where so we believe at Element,
yeah.
and this, I mean, it's not just Element. Globally, the human in the loop is extremely important, right? So there's a machine that suggests decisions, doesn't make decisions, suggests decisions. Right?
So let's use a real life example. There was a credit card that was released by a very big company a little while ago, and apparently its AI was steering women to get less credit than men, right?
Yes.
They took out the human element there, or there was just a chauvinistic pig there. What happened there?
Oh, okay, that's data, right? So now you're entering my favorite subject, right? Which is fairness and bias, garbage in, garbage out.
Okay.
Right. So if you're going to, how you build these models, you train it on data. So if you're going to put in biased, dirty data, your model's going to be biased and dirty.
Okay.
right? In fact, that speaks to more humans because basically the data is recording what humans are doing. So just think about that for a minute. So
So
the
humans were
humans
already biased, just being
there, right? So
being.
why are we holding machines to a whole different standard?
Yeah.
Beats me.
Yeah.
But um, but at the same time, you know, we have an opportunity here actually to make it better, right? So we
Sure.
can make it impartial, etc. So there's some work that needs to be done. Obviously, it's easy to be it's very easy to point and say you fucked that up so bad, right?
Yeah.
But fairness, bias detection, um, uh, discrimination cleansing of your data and your model is super important. So regulation and compliance of these models is super important. I do believe that the there's so little emphasis being paid on that right now
Sure.
in the world from regulators, compliance. They're concerned, but not enough is being done in a practical way before these things are launched.
Yeah.
Right. And there's not enough systems, checks and balances, automation in place to even make sure that these things are covered before you go release something in the wild and be embarrassed with.
Well, compliance isn't a big issue, right? Like, what if your AI starts taking on a model that's actually breaking laws, or breaking governance, or breaking regulatory? What happens?
And so, well,
How
first,
does the company deal with that now if that's happening? Like, you deal with financial institutions, they're
yeah,
highly regulated. They obviously
and they
want to
have
leverage the
very,
power of AI. So what happens if the
and
AI
they have
starts training itself to break some of the rules?
well, first of all, the institutions that I've worked with, anyways, have been very diligent about that, right? So
And
they
how?
don't
So,
allow.
so what are they
So
doing?
they have audit teams, right? So they have risk and compliance teams today. Models are not new, by the way,
Mhm.
right? Rules-based models and slightly.
Oh, all right. So let's start at the top again.
Yeah, yeah,
So I want to rephrase the question. The question was, if you look at financial institutions, they got a bunch of regulations, they got a bunch of governance, compliance, and if AI is running there and starts to go to break some of those rules, how do they prevent that from happening today?
so you have people call them model validators. So, by the way, models and using models and data to make decisions in the banking industry and financial services industry is not new. It's been going on
Of
for
course, of
many
course.
years, right? So, there's very established processes
Yeah,
where model validators look at the law, the governing laws from the financial regulators, from just general laws as well, to say, okay, here's the risk, or here's what we will do and will not do. And they set these stipulations
sure.
for the business units to say, if you were to release a model, it has to comply with these things. And there's an auditor that usually goes in and validates that the models comply with those laws.
Sure.
Here's where the challenge comes in. So earlier in rules-based models, it was easy to do because they were all written down. Code was handwritten, right? If X,
Yeah.
then Y, and you could bake in all of these things. Then you had these self-learning algorithms come in, which is this current state that we're in.
Yeah.
That you don't know what they learn. You haven't
Right.
coded them
It
in.
could be doing anything. I mean,
Right?
well, not anything, but you're hoping it's going down the right path.
So we're in the process of figuring it out. Is my answer. So
Okay.
we
Fair
the
enough. But it's still an army of people who are verifying this stuff then.
yes. There's regulators who are trying to figure out what the right regulations are and to give guidance to their financial companies and stakeholders to say, here's how we think you should do it. So how do we translate our laws that were great in a
Sure.
in the world of rules-based to self-learning and dynamic models, and then financial institutions are working together hand in hand with them to say, okay, here's how we will make sure that we govern ourselves to achieve that. So it's a watch the space. The work is in progress. I don't think we have definitive answers, but I'm not. I do want to say though that even through all of that, enough attention is being paid to it yet,
Okay.
and
Fair
that's
enough.
why you have the kind of incidences that you just mentioned, right? With this large credit card company and the
The miss rollout. Yeah, for sure.
yes.
Um, okay. Let's switch gears. Let's switch gears for a little bit. Element's now done. You guys are going into your fourth year. What is next on the horizon for Element? Is it like, how have you guys been operating? I feel you guys are almost becoming like Palantir. We know you do a bunch of AI stuff, but we don't know what. What could you publicly talk about that you are currently doing? Are you building products? How are you building products? Like, what type of products are you building? When could we see? Is it going to be a commercial release of them? Talk to me a little bit about the commercial stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I think at the end of the day, what we want to deliver is value to the client, right?
Sure.
And the value looks different in different use cases.
Get rid of the consulting speak. Don't stop with the value to the clients. What do you
No,
guys?
it really is value.
I agree.
Absolutely. But
But what product are you?
What
But what product are you building? I can tell you exactly what we're building.
Yeah, but no, you can't. Like, you're building certain things for clients, right?
Yeah,
like,
I can tell you in what industry what I'm doing. Sure.
Okay, sure.
I don't have to be specific.
I only give you 3 examples.
Sure.
Folks,
No, but like,
right?
is there productization? I'm going into different
So
revenues.
the productization in AI looks very different. So what we're doubling down on is essentially a few key capabilities that can be used in various different use cases and customized to a specific a certain set of domains, right? So, for example, Knowledge Scout,
Sure.
which is a platform that it can be query based, right? So we have applications for that in the pharma space, something I mentioned, the research space, but also in financial services, in manufacturing, in retail, etc. Right? So that's one of the products that we are pretty proud of and is doing really, really well. There's work that we're doing in the financial services space. We have a platform. So we have a platform that enables us to build AI applications very quickly, and some of these capabilities that we built. So we have one of the world's most advanced forecasting algorithms. It's called NBeats. We just launched it in Europe at the end of December. And we're building a ton of use cases around it, which I can't speak to, but that's a capability that we're doubling down on, and we can build solutions now end to end, go live with an AI solution for a customer within 6 months, from start to finish.
And that's a quick thing?
It's a complex thing, but done quickly.
I don't know. Like, I don't know the timelines in your space, right? Is 6 months
it's
a good thing? Is that a bad
go
thing?
live. I mean, it varies, right? These are complex things, take a long time to roll out. We're able to do that pretty well. So at this point in time, there is that's what we're focusing on right now. So when I talk about value, right? Knowledge Scout in and of itself is a capability. And then the value is extracted in the use case that it's implemented, and we can fashion it to power many different use cases, right? Across a spectrum of industries.
All right, I got a question. This one is coming from the other online channel, not Instagram, but what cities are leading in AI? So smart cities is a big initiative, man. What cities are like at the forefront here?
Cities, are we talking about talent or cities implementing AI? I'm a bit confused.
Dude, I just got the question, man. I read it to you word for word.
Let's
do both. Let's do both. All right, let's do both. Let's cover. So what in talent is Toronto the leader?
No.
Montreal.
So we release the talent report every year from Element.
Cool.
So you can check that out. The last one.
You should send it to us. We'll tag it along with our podcast everywhere.
Sounds good. So that's a takeaway, but and that gives you a good reveal. I think there are some countries that are further ahead. Let's talk about the country level. Certainly, United States is certainly by far a leader. Absolutely. I mean, they just have 300 million people. Like
talent. No, you're talking about talent.
I'm talking about talent, right? Okay. So from a talent standpoint, certainly the United States, Canada's a hotspot. United Kingdom is a hotspot. So lots of Singapore, even like in Asia, China, huge, right? So lots of the talent map is pretty strong, but it's still not enough. This is just in the talent pool that we have. We still don't have enough.
So for any youngsters who are watching this, start like embracing yourself.
Go invest your time.
There's going to be tons of jobs in the future for it. All right, let's switch the question to the other side. If you look at smart cities, who's leveraging AI the best?
Define best. I mean, lots of countries are leveraging.
Who's ahead of the curve here? Who's actually leveraging it?
Yeah. So I mean, if you take China, right, like Beijing and Shanghai, you now have smart cameras that police are wearing every day. SenseTime has created this facial recognition algorithm that can detect a criminal as they're walking by. So the police doesn't even need to. Yeah.
So if you're wanted, I get buzzed, like the police officer. If I'm a police officer, it'll buzz me and say, "Go arrest this guy."
Correct. Right. In COVID, right, situations, you had street cameras that are capturing who's out and being able to facially recognize who is out on the street during curfew.
Okay, so it actually goes back to you. It actually will go back to you and be like, "Hey, Karthik, it was you who was out at 11 p.m. Why were you out there? And now you're coming with me and getting a beating."
So now, to your point, you want that? You know, like, hey, if we have
Hey, I'm the last guy I want anybody following me around.
I mean,
so let's go back to smart cities then.
Yeah.
So in the smart city aspect, you're saying, okay, wait a second. You were talking about civil liberties. Let's go back to civil liberties. Yeah, no, I don't want that to happen. I don't want people to know, or the government to have closed circuit cameras and know where I am at all times and see what I'm doing. However, I do like my experience when I go to Dubai, and they pretty much are doing that already.
Yes.
Right? The UAE is doing that. They know where you are. If they wanted to find me within 10 minutes, I'm sure they can locate where I am anywhere within the country.
The UK is doing that too.
Yeah, the UK has a lot. Oh, so yeah. Okay. So this is really us in North America who are like holding on, saying, no, we don't want this.
Exactly. But it's happening there was this case where Amazon was helping law enforcement. There was a huge uproar about that middle of last year. You know, where Amazon was helping law enforcement agencies with public camera and facial detection, right? Mm-hmm. So point being, so to your point, that's an example of, yeah, absolutely. You want to turn it on, it can be done tomorrow. Right?
Sure.
But civil liberties go away. But smart cities, that is one example of smart cities. Now, it can also be used for good. Let's also remember that,
sure.
Right? Protection, to understand where, you know, if there's a criminal event that happens, to someone needs help somewhere, you know, can smart cities help? Absolutely, right? So that's one example of smart cities. I think that's being rolled out pretty quickly. Now, what's happening in Toronto with with our Sidewalk Labs project,
sure,
is I think it's a very smart idea. It's fraught with privacy issues, and I think they're working with the community to figure out how to resolve those issues. And I think that's a strong play, right? How do we figure out leveraging technology to have better urban experiences?
Yeah.
But not be not giving up civil liberties as a result, and be comfortable with that situation, right? So yeah, I think
cool.
You know, watch this space, right?
Will do. All right, Karthik, we are almost at over the hour mark, so we've gone over time. But
I actually need to jump.
No worries. Let's go to a quick takeaway. What do you want? What do you want your takeaway to be? I think one should be around Element, and let's hear what the takeaway should be for anybody who's listening, and when they should be contacting Element, and where Element plays a role. B, I would love to hear you personally and where you see yourself personally going within the Element area and helping customers. Both might be the same answer, but I'll leave it up to you.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a pretty exciting time. It's also a daunting time, right? Like let's face it. New as you know very well, clients, customers, and our partners are certainly looking at.
Are people calling you more right now?
I would say it hasn't changed.
Okay.
Right.
Steady demand all the way through.
Yeah, and
that's
because
good,
I think
that's good.
There's opportunities to help to use AI as an opportunity to help in the situations, right? So
sure.
I think there's that's a good thing. I think Element's in a very strong spot. I think we're stronger than we were before, and I think we're in a good spot. I'm very excited about where we are right now. For me personally, I mean, I'm really enjoying what I'm doing right now, which is spending time with not just clients but also internally, with the teams, like working on hard problems,
Mhm.
right? And finding solutions that that excite us, like say we actually pushed the state of the art, we actually did something that was
Sure,
meaningful, right? That's just super exciting for everybody. And then from a client standpoint, like we actually help push the needle on something new that actually changed the game, for the better,
for sure.
right? So yeah, and that's for me personally, and for Element. I think we share that.
Awesome, awesome. I want to thank you again for
Thanks, man.
coming on, talking about AI. Oh, you always explain it for us so well. I think we've done a couple of these already, and so I thank you for doing this. Uh, I'm going to hit you up to do another, AI workshop. I think that's the one thing you do that gets so much traction. We'll figure out a nice way to do it in the right forum to do it in the future. But I'm going to hold you up to that. You down to do that?
Awesome. Actually, you know what? We're launching a white paper in the next few weeks, about the maturity index of AI. So maybe, yeah, let's do it
Okay,
after that.
let's do it. Awesome. Once again, this podcast gets blasted everywhere. So it's on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, LinkedIn, Facebook. Go on social media, go follow it, first name basis. I want to thank Karthik Ramakrishnan again from Element AI for joining me today. I'm Sheetal from TribalScale, and we're signing off. Thank you, brother.
All right. Thanks, man.
All right, man.
Good to see
Take
you.
care.
Bye.